have most of our quorum here. So welcome to all those people logging in. I think we have quite a few, which is good. Some familiar names, some new names, and my name is Mike Bradley. I'm the head of the Power Conference that I run with fine individuals like those that are in front of you here. We are a nonprofit that really kind of fills a void that is this little niche of um, the transition or career assistance. It's kind of a very specialized TAP class, or we try to provide a lot of the stuff that the people aren't getting elsewhere. And I'm a Naval Academy grad, and the Naval Academy has plenty of networking groups, career fairs, they have chapters and whatever, and that's great for Naval Academy grads. But I'm looking 1, 2, 3, 4 of these people in here weren't Naval Academy grads, but they were awesome officers. And so we started this up 6 years ago, and it's been a lot of fun. So without further ado, why don't we go around the room? I guess not around, but I'll call everybody out here because everybody's windows are different. And you can just introduce yourself, a little bit about your military background and what you're doing now, where you're located at. So Corey, why don't you start us off?
So I went to Texas A&M. I was not in ROTC. I was just a regular guy. I went in on a NUPOC scholarship. I did OCS. I met Mike in Power School. We were in nearby apartments in Coventry Green and Goose Creek behind the Publix, or pardon me, the Piggly Wiggly. The Publix was nicer. So we went through that pipeline. I was on the Rhode Island there in Kings Bay. And after I got out, I decided I liked Power School so much I would do medical school, and that I liked prototype so much that I would do residency. And now I'm a doctor, family medicine. I was in med school in the Bronx. Then I did residency and practiced in West Philly. And then I moved to my wife's hometown in Northwest Ohio into the old family farmhouse. And now I'm practicing family medicine part-time in Lima, Ohio, and part-time in Ottawa, Ohio. So it's a lot of fun. Mostly I have been around to help people that are interested in medical school or the biohealth fields. There's many things to be done there. We have one gentleman who is at USUS right now, sent me some nice videos of Marine One going from the White House to Bethesda. Pretty crazy, going to Walter Reed. So he's having an excellent time, it sounds like. And if anybody's interested in medicine, I'm happy to help them out.
Thanks, Corey. Yeah, and we have people within our pipeline that are all flavors of doctors. Our one buddy's what's he, a dental surgeon, dermatologist.
Yeah, Dorf's dental surgery. Willett is orthopedics. Coburn is emergency medicine. He wasn't Nuke, but Scooty, he's a PA.
Yeah. No, but yeah. So we have a lot of friends that left the Navy or left the Nuke community and went into some flavor of medicine. So that's something we always try to offer. It's not the normal path, but it happens a lot more frequently than you think. So, all right. How about next, Lauren?
Sure, let me just come off mute. So Lauren Wilson, I was a Nuke SWO. I was a Naval Academy grad 2009. I did a tour on a destroyer first as a gunnery officer, kind of conventional SWO stuff like a normal Nuke SWO does. And then did, Power School prototype, full 9, did a couple years of a shore tour, and then transitioned out after that. And I wanted to go into technical sales. So did some career fairs. I went to Mike's first career fair. Pretty exciting. Really cool, I think, to see what companies that are looking for somebody specifically with our backgrounds, who they are and what they're interested in hiring you for. So anyway, I transitioned to sales, did healthcare sales for 5 years as a diagnostic sales rep for Thermo Fisher Scientific. And just recently, this past spring, sort of peak pandemic, a very turbulent time to transition, I started working for a startup called Global Data Consortium out of Raleigh, North Carolina, which is where I live. And I am now in the electronic identity verification space. So we help clients like, PayPal and Venmo onboard customers digitally through verification. So cool space, but I'm happy to talk sales, happy to talk medical sales, tech, anything like that. And just in general, have had some experience in presenting my companies at different career fairs and what they look for, what kinds of things you want to have on your resume and how to structure that. So happy to kind of talk through any of that as well.
Thank you, Lauren. Andrew, you can introduce yourself, please.
Hey, thanks, Mike. Glad to be here. So a little bit of an introduction. Went to UCSD to get my chemical engineering degree. From there, went into the NUPOC program, where I actually came in as a nuke instructor. Was teaching in Charleston for about a year before I decided to kind of like do the Popper thing and latch transfer over into NukeSWO. Went out to my first tour in Japan on board McCampbell as an electronic warfare officer before heading back through the pipeline and ending up on the Nimitz in Seattle. From there, wanted to get out and kind of like join the business world. So went to get my MBA from UCLA. Interned over at Google for a summer as a product management intern over at YouTube. And then from there, went over to Cisco, where I am right now as a product manager. Did a number of roles within Cisco, within security, within cloud. And right now I am a product manager for Access Points. So I help create them and also kind of help them through their lives, basically their entire life. And then also help out just sunsetting some old products. So happy to talk about MBAs or also product management and tech in general.
Awesome. Andrew, actually, he was one of the last people to help me at the Hawaii Power Conference back when we had a couple there, and that was just hard to time up with all the fast attacks, and he came up to some Seattle ones. So, but it's good to see you again, buddy. Kevin Ryan.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, Kevin, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Kevin. Was 2007 grad from NC State. Went to the Montpelier in Norfolk, then did a quick Fibron tour and ended up as an instructor at Power School. So I was running into a few former students, hopefully fond memories there. Anyway, now I'm working at Google in the fiber deployment in the Raleigh-Durham area. Job I got through the Power Conference without really knowing anything about the telecom or fiber optic world. So love talking about just the different spaces that folks can go into. I've also kind of gotten into startups recently through Google. So if you're interested in kind of looking into maybe a less established company, hopefully I can help you with some what I've learned there.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. Yeah, we'll definitely touch on startups tonight, but Kevin and Lauren both live in the Research Triangle in North Carolina, which is a really hotbed for startups. So Alex, please introduce yourself.
All right. Hello, everybody. So yeah, Alex Nestor here. I met a good amount of these folks, but I met Michael when I was actually up in upstate New York. So I 2012 graduated the Naval Academy, undergrad in English and a minor in Russian. I was able to spend a half a year abroad there. So went straight into the nuke field, submarines, did the Power School prototype, went to dive school, and then I was on the USS Georgia, so SSGN. And then I was red detailed to be a shift eng in upstate New York. And, when I was staying there at the big, conference and everything, the 06 is saying, hey, I didn't red detail anybody. And as I was sitting there, so it was fun. But great tour, learned a tremendous amount over those 2 years. And then through all the different job fairs and stuff like this one, got in touch with actually Amazon. So living the best life. I'm actually at work right now, so if I leave, it's because something broke out there. Yeah, I came into Amazon under the like the Military Pathways program. So I'm in operations. And yeah, it's going to be 2 years in January. So if any questions about the sprawling bureaucracy startup that is Amazon, there's obviously a tremendous amount of different stuff that we do. So I'm happy to speak to that space. I'm in Indiana, in Indianapolis with my wife. Actually right now I'm like 3 weeks into launching a building with 3,000 hourly employees, and what that looks like launching a building in a global pandemic. So learning a lot, but yeah, happy to answer any questions you all got. Great to meet everybody tonight.
Thanks, Alex. Funny thing about Alex is I would go up to Saratoga to do these meetups, and a lot of his friends were getting out of the Navy, and he would tell me how high their technical ratings were. Somehow you figured out how high all of your friends' technical ratings were. It was like, this guy, he's gonna bring, but this guy, he's got like off the charts. He's like me, whatever. So, yeah, thanks for joining us, Alex. So, Eric, you're up last.
Hey everybody, Eric Anderson, a 2011 grad from University of Illinois. I did ROTC. Following that, did this normal pipeline and ended up on the USS Texas out of Pearl Harbor. Did my 3 years out there, and as like Kevin, ended up being an instructor at Power School. So also similar, looking through the list, looks like some of my former students are here too. So welcome back. Hope you guys are not being tortured too much by the boats or ships. While I was in Power School, I was actually looking to go get my MBA when I got a cold LinkedIn message from my current boss, who was a nuke electrician back in the early thousands, saying, "Hey, here's an opportunity in private equity. What do you think about this?" Sent him a resume. 10 days later, I was on a plane to Denver to interview with Partners Group, which is a global private equity firm. And for the uninitiated, private equity essentially buys and sells companies. We buy it, hold on to it for 3 to 5 years, create value along the way with projects alongside management, the board of directors, and then sell it off for a profit on behalf of our clients. So we manage $96 billion of client assets, spread mostly in private equity as well as on debt, infrastructure, and real estate. My role specifically is on our ops team. So I have 2 mandates. One is to support the diligence on potential investments from an operational side. So where can we create value with the company? And then the other aspect is, after we take control of a company, how do we help management actually execute against that plan? So I spend a lot of time working with CEOs, CFOs, heads of chief sales officers to go either build strategy or figure out how to generate more cash flow. Really anything finance I touch, also on the operations side. So that's a little bit different than your traditional nuke path, but I know always highly appealing to a lot of nukes that learn about it.
Thank you, Eric. No, yeah. So this is part of the Power Conference board. We might have one gentleman join us later, possibly 2. So if they log in, I'll introduce them at the appropriate time. So this whole transition webinar, this is a new thing we've started doing this year in conjunction with the 2 Power conferences. Obviously it's a result of the coronavirus. And I think it's been cool to bring everybody online and see your questions. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of this question and answer happened in person at our events, like our meetups we do. I would bring a board member. Lauren came to one. Kevin's been to one. Alex attended them up in Saratoga. So we would come and we would just make ourselves available near your bases and stuff like that. So if you guys ever see, once we're past this, a meetup in your town or your buddy's town, that it's just us coming out to be available to answer questions, and a lot of just networking. And for a lot of the nukes, it's the first time they've kind of showed their cards that they might not be a career military officer, and they are a little nervous. So we try to put them at ease. If appropriate, put a drink in their hand and say, hey, this is kind of why we do this. So, anyway, so if you have questions about the actual fair on Wednesday, it's our second Zoom fair. You can put those in the chat as well. We'll try to answer more of your career questions. And panelists, kind of, raise your hand if you see ones that you feel you're more qualified to answer, or you want to answer. I had a question emailed in that I'll pull up here in a second. Some of you guys have been answering Joe's question there in the panel, but Joe, as far as retiring and getting out, you kind of have an advantage on a lot of us that you don't have to think about retirement or as much of an income. But I'd say what are you really interested in now? Because if there's something you could get passionate about right now, there's definitely a way to make a career out of it. If I'm really into data sets and population data and things like that, and if I had more free time, like, I would totally try to find a way to get into something like that, analyzing and it might require me to learn some R or SAS, computer language that I don't know. But a lot of us here on the board have trained ourselves with things that we needed to learn to get to where we're at. Just for this power conference, I've had to get heavy on websites and email marketing and all kinds of things like that, much better with Excel and now Zoom. So that's one thing I want to say as far as that goes. And anybody else want to add on to that? Difference for a retiring person, vice a transitioning person?
I guess I just have one thing, Mike. Being present at several conferences in the past representing my company, I had a general come up to me and kind of probably do this poorly, and I think it's a good example just of kind of doesn't matter how many years you've been in. It's so helpful and so important to appropriately translate your skill sets and really just convey, like you said, Mike, get something that you're passionate about, because really kind of the sky is the limit, anything goes. I would just caution anybody from feeling like you're going to hand a civilian company, your resume that I am sure is, well qualified and impressive with a lot of military accomplishments, and possibly they might have no idea about any of those things and not necessarily be as impressed as they should be. So my advice would just be to really kind of focus in on that resume. Fit reps are like a great place to start just for career milestones and bullet points, but translating that, especially at that career milestone, I think is so, so important, so that somebody can see how relevant and that you're able to kind of insert into whatever company kind of right away. I just think that translating skills is going to be really, really critical.
And something I talked to all nukes about, but certain things like nukes crush it in sales, especially tech sales. That was something I would totally consider. If you're in a command type person, you probably have pretty good interpersonal skills. So like that would be something I'd consider. Another thing, like I said, we'll touch on startups, but startups don't care what, shape, color, age, whatever. If you can do a job, like they are about as the least discriminatory community out there. So that would be something I would consider for anybody. And for those of you that are new to I know you've heard of startups, but a startup doesn't have to be 3 people in a garage eating ramen noodles. They could be 100 people and that has been funded, Eric and Andrew can talk a little bit more probably about the tiers of startups, but those are communities I would definitely at least check out for a retiree as well. So.
Hey, Mike, I saw a question actually came in from Aaron, and I'd like to go ahead and answer that if it fits in right now. So Aaron asks in the Q&A about what tips people have about getting their foot in the door at companies during the pandemic, and like, so what advice do you have? How's different? And to be completely honest, I think it's actually easier now, at least for me, to go and speak with these companies than it would have been otherwise. Without the pandemic, you would have had a lot of times it would be better to be face-to-face with someone, to go to events, to go to meetups, and to talk to someone in person. With the pandemic, everyone's on a level playing field now with Zoom calls, with all these meetings. So even if you're, say, based at Oconus or somewhere that is like on the opposite side of the country, of the company that you're looking for, you're on the same playing field as someone who's next door to it. So in some ways, it can make it easier. As far as the tips go, I would actually recommend like going to LinkedIn and take a look at the company that you're looking for. Take a look at who's there and who you may have close connections with. And even if you may not have that close connections with someone, find someone who's in the role that you're looking at, and basically connect with that click connect, but put a convincing note there, not just like a, hey, this role looks good, I'd like to learn more, but more of a, hey, your job looks amazing, I'd love to learn more about how you got it, and I'm super excited about this. So basically, I think it's a little bit easier during the pandemic to kind of stuff for these roles.
One thing, kind of going back to the how to get your foot in the door with these folks question, is what I've seen for a lot of positions is the biggest asset that any nuke can sell is your ability to learn. When you tell folks like, hey, I went to college for economics and I learned how to operate a nuclear reactor in a year, they're like, okay, like you can pick up anything. Some roles aren't going to be that. They're going to be looking for an immediate fill who's had 20 years industry experience. But I think the roles that at least my friends have been happiest in have been, okay, this guy or girl is sharp. We can put them in here and they'll learn it as they go and accelerate. So definitely something to pitch. Like, don't discount that.
No, it's good. And yeah, Andrew and Kevin, both good advice. The one question, crap, I scrolled down. As far as in the tech industry, getting an MBA, Greg, in the tech field, how valuable is important is an MBA? I think universally we would all say from where, I mean, I think nukes in general, the advice I give nukes, are you going to, I live in Pennsylvania. Are you going to go to Penn State for you can get your MBA there? Are you going to go to Wharton or Carnegie Mellon? Especially in like tech, maybe a Carnegie Mellon would be a pretty good one. There are definitely tiers of MBAs. There's also MBAs that'll help you in certain regions. Andrew has his MBA from UCLA, really good West Coast MBA, probably met some pretty cool entrepreneurs, people in the tech field in LA and San Francisco and whatever. The internships, the connections they have at that MBA were probably really good West Coast, whatever. Whereas like Carnegie Mellon, which is real good on the East Coast, wouldn't be as good for the West Coast tech probably. So those are the things. I do not have my MBA, but I've since I started this, I've answered so many MBA questions. I've asked my friends so many MBA questions. And then we have an expert coming on Wednesday. Highly recommend talking to Richard. He is like this savant about, well, first of all, he got his MBA and JD from Stanford. So, been there, done that. He's written multiple books on how to get into the elite business schools and how to get into the elite law schools. But then you start talking to him and he knows he knows all the ways to not to get into the best schools, but how to get the most money from the best schools. Like you apply to Brown because they always match any money that Harvard's going to do, or vice versa. And yeah, Richard Montauk, he'll be logging in on Wednesday. So if anybody has any business school, he'll have his own table there, breakout room. So any other any comments about the how valuable is your MBA in the tech field?
I guess, again, going back to my previous comments is don't discount the training. I've thrown out there a bunch of times the guy who finished last in Power School with me went to Harvard Business School. The guy who is the self-admitted worst submariner ever just finished up at Penn. We both know him, but it kind of sells a good brand. Like, okay, this is something that's what you've already done is really worthwhile.
It's good advice, Kevin. Yeah. So,
Michael, just to touch on, because we've kind of danced around this before on other conferences, but the ODU Masters in Engineering Management, I kind of neglected to say that I did that, and I think sometimes that brings up some good questions. But along this same thread, I think Michael, what you said is really important in that depends on where you get your MBA. But at least from my perspective, going into kind of any role, I think a master's degree really helps just check that box. And I know, for one, I absolutely got a higher base salary in my kind of advanced sales role because I had a master's degree, and that was more than their minimum requirement. And they paid me accordingly for that. So that helped there. Do I use my engineering management in my current identity verification data job now? Like, not so much probably, but I think for me it was a good way to sort of capitalize on all of the pain and fire hose that is Power School and Prototype, as we all love it, and really kind of get something for that, more or less. So that's my little plug for the master's in engineering management. But really, I think a master's degree or an MBA depends on what you want to do, but certainly that level of degree of some sort, I think, is helpful for foot in the door sort of transition steps.
And from my view, a lot of people that want to pivot into finance, specifically investment banking or top tier management consulting, so the names you may or may not have heard of, McKinsey, Bain, Boston Consulting Group, it is a much more established path to go into either one of those fields through a top tier MBA. So call it your Harvards, Whardens, Booths, Kellogg's of the world. Is it possible to go in through other ways? Yes. But the traditional way is to get your MBA, do the 2 years, do an internship between your first and second year, and then hopefully convert that into a full-time offer in your second year. And don't get me wrong, those can be pretty lucrative paths, and MBAs can be a career accelerant to get you there, especially if you get a top tier one. Not in investment banking myself, but if you are going to go to a big firm in New York, you could be looking at $200,000 a year plus in compensation with an MBA. But they're going to take their pound of flesh from you and make you work a lot for it. Same thing goes for consulting, those top tier consulting groups. So it is a path, but there are ways, a lot of us who didn't get MBAs to get in as well. It's more networking.
And just to add on to that, one of the other benefits of the MBAs that hasn't really been touched on yet are the connections that you make while in the program. I believe that the vast majority of the benefit you get from MBAs are more so the people that you're going to class with than the outcome. Obviously, the outcome is great. Obviously, it acts as a launching pad to a lot of the different areas that you want to do. But those fellow students, basically, that your cohort that you're going through with, are the real connections that even post MBA you're going to call back on and say, hey, need help here, or hey, how can I help you out there? Basically, those are the lifeline that lasts years and years and years post MBA, not just for the career itself.
No, thank you, Andrew. Yeah. Something I always want to mention when we talk MBAs is the nuke. You're an engineer. You're you have a clearance. You are a veteran. You have a lot of those kind of pretty interesting things that makes you different than most MBA applicants. One thing I always recommend, or at least volunteer, if you've considered going to Europe for MBA, because there are a couple real top tier business schools in Europe that when you go, you add another diversity characteristic of being international. So INSEAD in Paris, the London School of Economics, they're all very well regarded. You could go get your MBA at INSEAD and go work for Eric's company, partners firm, in a heartbeat. That's no brainer, and you'd be getting your MBA somewhere interesting, at least in my perspective. So, anyways, Mr. Jose, can you hear me by chance?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah. So, Jose is my Naval Academy classmate. He's living in San Diego, and he's since he's on West Coast, he doesn't mind logging in and giving us an hour of his time. Jose, can you just give me a brief introduction about your Navy career and what you're doing now?
Yeah, so let's see. I graduated back in 2001 from the Naval Academy, mechanical engineering. Really had no desire to become a real engineer, but I did go into the nuke program. I was fast attack stationed here at Point Loma in San Diego. Did a Westpac here, a decommissioning back east for the sub we were on. And then I got out, didn't exactly know what I wanted to do. I spoke to another nuke who had gone, I think he was from like Georgia Tech, and he recommended that I go into look at project management and consulting, because that's what he had done. It kind of gives you an behind the scenes look at a lot of companies. So I did that. I did go through a couple of headhunting firms as well, stuff on my own. One of the headhunting firms placed me at a good consulting firm. They were a national firm, about mid-size. We primarily did project and program management for utilities. I was hired to go into the power side of the house, but I quickly, in the office I was in, they mainly worked in water utilities. Didn't know anything about water. But a project's a project. And so I quickly got into that world of water. Did that for about 5-6 years, managing large capital improvement projects, programs, really a lot of construction, which I didn't know anything about. And then I ended up going work for one of my clients. I really enjoyed the water field, but I didn't want to keep doing the consulting thing. I wanted to work more on the management side for a water utility. So I got hired in the operations department as an operations and maintenance manager. Did that for a few years. Got promoted to the assistant chief of operations, did that for a few more years. And then as of March of this year, I'm now the general manager of the water utility here in San Diego. So that's kind of my background.
Congratulations. That's a pretty big promotion, right?
Yeah, it was kind of surprising. I didn't really anticipate I would get it. It was kind of one of those things I just threw my hat in the ring just for the experience. And so the good news was I got the job, and the bad news was I got the job. And so from my first day as general manager, even though I had worked at this company for about 8 years, was the day the pandemic was declared, an actual emergency on March 11th. So those were my first days. So it's been pretty stressful since, but you really do nuke it out. You just kind of figure it out and you kind of work your way through it. So
That's awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, Jose. I really wanted Jose to join because I had multiple people tell me, like, you need to have the utilities represented at the career fair, and I never knew exactly how to do it because a lot of nukes work in utilities, providing power, providing water, those type of systems. I mean, taking care of whole cities. Our friend Patrick Karalikas, another board member, he runs all the systems for MIT's campus. So not exactly a utility, but kind of the same vein. And another engineer that's up in Portland providing all their natural gas that goes into Portland. So these type of things, it's public, it's public service still, but it's using your brain and solving problems. Probably every day is different. So if anybody has any questions for Jose with regards to that, or San Diego, he's homesteaded in San Diego for a while now. So thanks for joining us, Jose. And Jose, if you see questions in the chat that you feel like you want to answer, just pipe up, okay? All righty. So any other questions? Any of the other board members want to jump on?
Yeah, there's one in here from Eric Bermudez. Are there certain aspects of our military background that you have found hold more weight than others and should be more highlighted in terms of drafting a resume or interview? And a couple of the other board members answered in the chat. The big one I've run into that I see a lot of people in the civilian world lack is project management skills. I see so many projects that start and aren't tracked and eventually fall apart no matter how good the intentions are. Whether it's a project that's going to generate $1 million in profit or $100,000 in profit, you see dead bodies of these projects all over the place. And unless you're at an Amazon or a Google or somebody that has like a really good project management system or a lean manufacturing system, it's just so inconsistent out there. So I think that's something nukes do really well, whether it's natural in your ability or the XO of your boat yelled at you enough, you somehow got an ability to manage a project from start to finish. And you know what it takes because you have that persistence. And so if you can highlight the ability to, on your resume, to bring that out, to say, I've managed this project, I've managed, a good one is if you're an availability coordinator for a submarine. That's a big project. That can be many multi-million dollars of repairs that happen in 2 months. To say that we got it done on time, yeah, maybe the shipyard screwed you a little bit, but you can embellish. Highlighting that ability is huge. And it's something I look in resumes, whether it's for my own firm or if I'm interviewing people at the companies I work with. Another thing to kind of along with that is you've managed equipment that is worth millions of dollars, maybe even hundreds of millions of dollars. Highlighting that in your resume is also a big thing. If you can put a number against something that you've done, it speaks more to the civilian world. I know you've done great things. You've led teams. Well, put how many people you've led. A lot of people in their early 20s in the civilian world have never led a single person. Maybe they're not even going to lead somebody until their early 30s. So highlighting that too is huge. So project management, numbers against your resume, and then how many people you've led are huge differentiators from my perspective.
That's awesome, Eric. And one quick thing I'll just add on the numbers thing is for sales particularly, rankings really matter. So we happen to be ranked. And so if you've got top rankings, number 1 out of 15 JOs or top 3rd every time, whatever quantitative rank you can put on a resume, just highlights your, your kind of pedigree, if you will, and also your competitiveness, which is really important in sales and frankly translates to many things you will do. Those kind of any sort of breakouts, put those numbers in there if you have them.
Something I always want to talk about is when I was getting out, I didn't know the difference between recruiter, HR person, hiring manager. All that was just all different words for me. So something I want to just mention is that like for our job fair, there will be recruiters come and they're awesome. They're normally, you know, someone that has like a communications background or maybe even sales or something like that, and they're good at explaining what their company does, listening to you and the exchange of ideas. But then for what we try to do at our career fair is we always have a nuke come and be able to say, okay, this is what you did on the boat, this is how it translates here. And those people are often hiring managers. Those are often people that they sign the bottom line and say, okay, maybe you're not going to be working directly for that person. Maybe they're 2 layers up or whatever. Panelists, how many of you are technically or have been hiring managers? Anybody hiring manager? Jose probably is. Alex, Andrew. You know, so Kevin's like, no. Yeah. So maybe Alex, or how about no? Start with Andrew. Andrew's got a call with India in an hour, so he's got to go. But when you are a hiring manager, what are you looking for something on a resume in particular? Like, what are some of your things that you try to pick out?
So the interesting part about the recruiting, I was doing some recruiting over at Cisco, where I'm at right now, and the interesting part is that the sheer volume of resumes that come in is it's ridiculous, because so a lot of times you have a role that you're hiring maybe 5 people for, and you get 100 resumes. So one of the biggest things that we do is, one, like to make sure that we actually do get a kind of a full view of each applicant, even though it is a lot of times difficult with the time frame that you have to kind of pick and choose by. But I think the biggest things that stand out is what Lauren said, like making sure that you are able to rank yourself somehow. Like, okay, hey, on my ship or on my boat, I was one of 5 JOs, or be able to highlight basically the tactile values of what you did, or like how does that relate to me? For me, I understand what a military resume looks like, but a lot of times you have people who don't know what you did I did in the Navy. So if you can be able to translate what you did in the Navy to the civilian world, it's like, okay, I was a program manager managing this many programs. Whether or not you realize it, you probably have done something that's program management like, if you're going for a program manager in this example. So biggest takeaway for me is to be able to translate what you've done into kind of a civilian world. You could take a look at sites, you could take basically pick our minds here, and to be able to best translate that over.
Yeah, and then to kind of piggyback that off of Andrew, right? So much of what you do is a project. If you're standing watch, right, that's managing equipment, that's managing uptime in an operating reactor plant with a high margin of safety, right? If you are, for myself, like I was an RCA, I messed that project up. I did a bad job of managing audit and surveillance system, and that's a good story where it's talking about something you owned and positives and negatives, and making mistakes is fine so long as you learn from it, right? When we talk about like what people look at, right, those are the words like, hey, I managed, if I've got a division of 12 people, I managed 12 personnel. One was a salaried leader that reported to me. The 11 others were all salaried employees. Even though I had a headcount of only 12 people, the salaried workforce for me was in excess of $1.6 million a year, right? Navy, right? They got inflated salaries, stuff like that. So you can use those to your advantage, right? Those are the words and those are the things that kind of gets your foot in the door for the hiring manager. And then when you're actually talking about, right, your experiences, how, the challenge for you all is how do you translate, I drove a submarine. Okay, well, what does that mean, right? I managed a watch team and 3 different groups to all coordinate their daily activities, so that way we could meet our operational demands, right? just kind of getting that speak. And that's kind of why we're all here, to kind of help you guys through that process. So that way we can kind of help translate and talk to the different teams.
Something I would recommend is take a few steps back and think about it maybe from an outsider's point of view, what it is you do. Because what you do for a living is abnormal. Like, you do not do what most people do, but it's normal to you because you do it, all your buddies do it, everybody you work with is, on the ship. And so every day you get up, you go to the boat, you work on the boat, you go home, or you don't go home. And that's just normal life for you. This is not normal life for most people. And so trying to look back and exactly break up what you do, how to translate that into civilian speak. Like, it's very impressive if you can say that, sure, you were ORCL and you got above average on a surprise ORS, and you turned around and you drove the channel during the TRE and got above average, but civilians do not know what that means. So take kind of a 100-yard view of what you're doing, break it up into smaller pieces, and take that as a mental exercise. So not only can you write a resume that looks like it's written in English, but also when people ask you about it, you can you can give an intelligible answer that doesn't, on one hand, just spew a bunch of jargon, but on the other hand, sound like you're just trying to talk about submarine movies. So it's kind of a balance.
To Corey's point, the one thing I recommend is taking your resume and handing it to a cousin, an aunt, an uncle. Your mom and dad are too close. They love you too much to tell you you're wrong. You need to find somebody that has no idea what you've been doing the last 3 to 5 years and say, does this make sense, without having to explain any of the terms.
Eric, yeah, that's a great point. I was just going to say, think about it, if you're like home for Thanksgiving with your relatives, is just what I was going to say, and you're trying to explain, how you do what you do and how you do it. Certainly the military, and I remember doing this too, it sounded so cool, like all the acronyms, and gunnery officers, gunno, and like OD, all this stuff, and frankly, like, okay, that's cool for like 2 minutes, and then people are not listening anymore because they don't understand what you're saying. So definitely just kind of do that's a great way to put it, Eric. But the other thing I was going to mention is in terms of kind of prepping for resume and interviews. Think about bullet points for resumes, stories for interviews. So kind of bullet points for resumes, stories for interviews. So you really don't want to have too many words. I mean, I think everybody's resume style is differently, is different. So I shouldn't just like say it like it's a universally accepted thing. But typically, like you just heard Andrew talk about 100 applicants for 5 spots. Like, I promise you, if your resume looks like, a novel, it's like, no, next. Bullet points, call out the numbers, like people have been speaking to. And then in an interview, like Alex was kind of talking about, start formulating and practicing stories from your experiences. Give an example of a time when sort of things, because those are interesting to people. People are human. They don't want to kind of just like do a back and forth question answer, till your eyes bleed. Tell them something interesting. Tell them what, surprised you, how you overcame it, what's happened that didn't go well, time when one of your sailors lost their minds and this is how you managed it. I mean, those are interesting stories that display your leadership skills, your project management skills, your ability to adapt to change quickly, like all these things. Civilian companies find very valuable in any sort of business environment. So I honestly would just make a list, as I did interview prep and as I help coach people for interviews now, just practicing what you're going to say so that you don't ramble. You don't have to memorize something necessarily, but however, get comfortable with what your stories are and get comfortable with how you best represent yourself through those stories.
To kind of jump on the back of that, like what Lauren said, practice your stories in front of who you can. So whether that's your significant other or whatever, but you can also practice in front of hiring managers. in jobs where you say, well, I may not be that interested in this. That's great to learn more about the position and maybe you'll like it. I'm not saying do anything where it's like, I'm never going to take this job, waste everybody's time. But I've certainly been in a few situations where I've said, hey, after learning a little bit more about this is something I really like to do. And I got to practice my interviewing. So for the job that I really, really want, I'm going to be that much sharper. Definitely been a good thing. Dang, I had a second thought. Now I forgot about it. So I'll shut up now until I think of it again.
Well, maybe you'll think of it here in a second.
Yeah.
Lauren said that reminded me of so one of the reasons I decided to start doing this, I had the most amazing transition experience. I was in DC. I went to 3 Service Academy career conferences, and then the TAP I went to, I don't know how I ended up in this class, but it was me and a bunch of admirals and generals and colonels and lowly lieutenant me. So they had the best resources for our TAP class ever. We had the lady that that dressed all the senators, show us how to dress for interviews. They flew up a professor from Corey from McCombs Business School, who was a Army vet. He donated his time for that week, and he led the TAP session for the week. But what he said was, treat your resume like a big business card. And I think that's kind of what Lauren was saying with the bullets on your resume stories. So like, and your resume is supposed to get you to the interview. So I always say don't overthink it. And but yeah, have us all look at it or other people look at it too. But don't. For us with this career fair, your resume is gonna find its way to a nuke. Don't decode it too much that you don't brag about yourself. Like if you got 2 comms on as your JO tour because you were like filling in for the WEPs who got medevaced or whatever, and say you got 2 comms on your JO tour, and we will translate it for people and be like, whoa, this guy's a rock star, gal's a rock star, So, but yeah, that's for this career fair, but for other stuff or just forwarding your resume to civilian companies, to Amazon, to whatever, do everything that everybody's saying here. So,
I thought of that second thought now, Mike, is don't be afraid to plagiarize from other folks too. Like if you go on LinkedIn and you say, I really want to work at, I'll give GE as an example. Like I thought I wanted to work there. I said, I think my search was GE submarine officer. I found a guy. He said, this is what my resume looks like. Do something like this and you're sure to get in the pipeline. I got a job offer. So like folks are there to help you out.
Yeah, actually, so I do have to run pretty soon, but Kevin, you just touched upon a point that I wanted to highlight. Essentially, whenever you're applying for these roles, these companies are giving you essentially the cheat sheet for getting to that role. Those job descriptions there are showing essentially what they're looking for. So basically what you could do is you could just take those bullet points and see how your experiences fit those bullet points and customize your resume for that role. And that can help you stand out amongst all those other 100 applicants that are for that role. So thanks, Mike, for setting this up. Unfortunately, I do have to run, but if you have any questions for me specifically, you can forward them to Mike, or Mike, I'm sure you could probably forward those questions over to me regarding MBAs or tech sector, at least for product management. All right, take care.
Thanks, Andrew. Take care.
Yeah, that's a good point on fulfilling the requirements. Like, speaking from a Google perspective, if you don't meet the minimum requirements very clearly that are in that job description that's posted, it is not going to make it any further. And that doesn't matter who you know or what you can do. Those are the requirements, and to So remain in compliance, they're going to prove that they meet those 100%.
No, that's a good point, Kevin. That's a good point.
Kevin,
Alex, I wanted to throw you under the bus since you've been. So Alex has done a lot, like an extreme amount of interviews and interview preps during the coronavirus, like probably over 100 within Amazon's veteran network. What are some of the major screw ups people do when they're on these online interviews or just to interviews in general?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. Yeah, and yeah, with my role in Amazon, right, I'm launching a building, and so with that, I need to hire a bunch of people. So I've been doing it's like 130 interviews the last 6 months, right? So you can see the different panelists. So the first thing, right, this is your first impression, right? So is your background kind of like normal, right? Can you like, do you have good lighting? Like 100% test it out, right? Get your laptop, launch an instant meeting, see what you look like, right? Is your background, I interviewed from my basement, so I had like some open rafters above me and had some stuff, but that was okay because I was aware of it and I had good lighting, and so I could speak to it. And for me, it was a bit of an icebreaker, right? So first off, that's your impression. Second off, you are interviewing, so that is your job for the day, right? So it's not your time to like take care of your pets. It's not your time to be walking around outside or driving, right? That is your job, is to do and conduct that interview. I've had a couple where a guy had like just woken up and he literally like, you can only see like this much of his face and he's yelling and he's like pouring himself cereal and stuff. Like, no, like if you can't prepare for the job interview, how do I expect you to prepare for the job itself, right? So much of it is preparation and actually practicing, right? Like it's okay to practice, to like set this up, go through, speak one of your stories, and then just watch the video, right? It's going to be embarrassing the first couple of times because you're going to do some weird twitches. You're going to like do some weird statements that you'll say 5-10 times in a row, right? Get those out and practice, so that way you actually knock it out of the park on game day, right? So that's my biggest thing. Like, this is when you do your interview, because virtual interviewing, it's probably not going anywhere for a little while. Like, that's your job. Take it seriously and ask for help, right? I'm on LinkedIn. Happy to help if I can. I don't have much time, but I certainly can help when I'm available.
That's good.
Like, it's not like you're FaceTiming with your mom. You're on it. This is your interview. Like, put the cereal down. That's funny.
Yeah, I think like Alex said, feel free to ask for help. I can tell you, so when I went from consulting into work for the water agency I worked for, it actually required a state, California State Professional Engineer's license, which I didn't have. Your PNEO is equivalent when you actually look at it from a skill set standpoint. If you got your PNEO, it should be pretty equivalent. Just out of the blue, I just never take no for an answer, and don't worry. The hiring managers will figure out what you need to know. I reached out and I Googled, PNEO equivalent PE, and I found this associate professor at MIT who was a nuke, who was doing their EDO program, who actually ended up finding out a classmate of mine was good friends with him. But he was an associate professor, and I just emailed him out of the blue and said, listen, I've already done the research, and I know that our PNEO is equivalent to the California state, most state PEs. And I did a little spreadsheet and everything. I said, could you provide your opinion on it? He's like, oh, I'll do one better. He didn't even know me. He was a sub guy that was now at MIT. And I sent it to him. He stamped it because he actually had a Massachusetts PE that he had taken. And he's like, I've done both. And he stamped it and said, this is equivalent. And because of that one piece of paper, that this random stranger, that got me in the qualified interview. And so then that got me to the interview, which brings me to another point. Oftentimes when you go to the hiring manager, you're actually usually interviewing with your potential future boss. They've already figured out whether you're qualified for the position. I mean, there's a few red flags and there's some they'll filter out. Now they want to know, do they want you to be a part of the team? Are you somebody that they want to work with? So don't be so insecure about trying to prove yourself, your technical skills or your experience. That'll naturally shine, but you want to be yourself. You want to be sincere and you want to be authentic, because they want to say, you know what, they know they're going to teach you some stuff, but they want to know that they want to work with you. So that's, but that little thing got my foot in the door to then be able to have those other conversations.
That's a great story. So do you put PE after your name now, Jose? So
No, I still don't, but I have no problem defending it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Go ahead.
To this point, I think that's really important is if another nuke or Navy officer reaches out to me on LinkedIn, I will make time for that person. My life, as much as everybody else's, is busy, but I want to give back to the community. And you'll find on LinkedIn, if you just reach out to a random nuke or a random Navy officer, they're usually very willing to give you 15 minutes, 30 minutes of their time for a call. I constantly troll LinkedIn, one, just figure out what other people are doing with their lives after the Navy. But two, I never know who else is going to be useful for my future to build that network. So I think it's really important that if you have a question about a job, reach out to somebody and ask it, because more often than not, there is a nuke in that job already, and you just need to find that person.
Yeah, I think that's an awesome point. And I've said over the past few years of coming as a board member after a participant in the Power Conference, like that was one of the best days of my year. Like I enjoyed, I was exhausted talking to so many people, and I'm still exhausted now, even though we're over Zoom. But it felt awesome. Just being able to talk about different options, what I screwed up, and also being able to say, when I was in your position, I was scared. And like, that's okay, because there's not any other jobs out there that require you to resign 9 to 12 months in advance and not know what's on the other end and not know what even your options are on the other end. So if I convinced some people to stay in the Navy because they liked it, like that was certainly something I considered, and it was a tough choice. Like I like being a submariner. I decided to get out, and then if I opened some eyes up to say, hey, you don't have to be the maintenance manager at the tire plant if you don't want to, even though that's what everybody says what the headhunters say you're qualified for, then I hope that made a little bit of a difference in folks' lives.
No, that's cool, and I think most people are kind of afraid to transition, and something I keep telling nukes as they transition, while you're in the Navy is your paycheck. It's normally your friend group, and it hopefully is what you feel good about, or one of the things you feel good about, that you're serving the country, you're deploying to protect the country, and being a nerd to protect the country. But when you leave the Navy, don't try to find a job that you're going to do all three, because it's pretty hard. Like I always volunteer myself. What do I feel good about? My marriage, my kids. I feel good that we do this. But I volunteer in my church. I do prison ministry, which is really, I can't believe how much I enjoy it when I could go into prisons pre-COVID. That's the stuff I feel good about. How do I make money? Well, I do some consulting. I do this. I pay myself a small nonprofit salary for this. And then I also do some Airbnb stuff. And I have a sugar mama. So, and then My friend circle. I mean, I do see a lot of these people who are my friends at the career fairs, and meetups. But my friends, I actually have a running club that I'm a member of. Those are my friends. So there's kind of like three separate buckets. But we're in the Navy. Everything was the Navy for me. So I think that's one of the reasons we might be afraid when we're transitioning. But just go out knowing like you are going to do something you're proud of. You are going to make money, and you're probably going to have a lot of friends too. So you're going to be fine. So we did have one emailed in question that I'd like to read from a guy that couldn't be on tonight. He's going to join us. It's a pretty good one. How did you deal with command leadership team that were less than supportive of your decision to separate from the Navy? It has been challenging to convince my immediate command of the importance of networking calls, conferences, and interview prep. I have been told that is what terminal leave is for more than once, and my command is not interested in accommodating shifts to working hours to allow for such activities. Anybody have any comments they want to say to that?
So in the real world, if you don't foster an environment where the people working for you are happy and feel valued, they'll leave and they'll go work someplace else. Oh my goodness, that is a gold mine of an email right there. I don't know. I mean, I would try to get crafty with how you can get time on that, but that is just a nightmare. And that's coming from someone who had 7 captains in a year. Like, that is a bad email.
Yeah. One thing I told him is I heard that at least on the enlisted side, a couple of years back, maybe even 10, a lot of enlisted sailors were just going on unemployment, and they were getting out and going on, which is a drain on the Navy if a lot of people do that. And so the Navy, that's supposedly one of the reasons why the Navy has helped do a little better job with transition. But how about like when you're actually dealing with your skipper and I'm trying to think of creative solutions for that.
I would honestly say right now that's not the end of the world because you're not going to anything. You know what I mean? Like you're mainly network on your own time. You know what I mean? Like in between watches, whatever it is, LinkedIn is your friend. And frankly, you're not disadvantaged by not being allowed to fly somewhere, do something, take some time off, do kind of the main things that we've all been talking about. LinkedIn, reach out to, us, find alumni groups. If you want to relocate to a certain area, there are Facebook groups. I mean, there's just a lot of virtual networking that can be done, even in an unfortunate situation like that.
I know it's more of a startup thing, but any of you guys involved in any of the Bunker Lab stuff or any of the Research Triangle One or whatever? Or I'm just wondering if they're even doing anything right now, because that's always, if you're near a metropolitan area. Bunker Labs is a startup incubator that's for veterans, and they have some really good young professionals things within metropolitan areas. Most major cities have one. Some are really good, like the Boston one, Seattle one, Chicago, DC. And those are things I often tell nukes to reach out to when they want a specific area. If you're in New London, you want to get a job in Boston, see if the Bunker Labs is having a, happy hour, young professionals hour at some cool MIT thing or whatever. But people in the startup community are pretty crafty, so I wouldn't be surprised if they're having like Zoom happy hours or something like that. So, but Lauren, you're totally right.
So Bunker's doing the Zoom Connects. So the Connects used to be like the events where it would be getting people in the startup community together with just whoever was interested, like me, going, having some pizza and some beers, and, meeting new folks. I haven't gone to one of the virtual ones yet, just haven't had the opportunity, but totally agree. Like, awesome experience and great stuff they're trying to accomplish there. As well as, like, I met some awesome folks who maybe aren't even in the startup space. Like, it's a good mixer. Like, you're meeting good business people, if not good entrepreneurs. So.
Had a question about the reserves. So Eric is in, Lauren was in. I stayed in the IR for as long as I could because I kind of wanted to stay in, but I had 3 kids and 19 months or whatever it was, and I just needed a little bit of time to get my life together. The question is, any reserves? So what would you have to say the best and the worst parts of it are?
Yeah, so I am an active drilling reservist. Yeah, I'm off mute. Active drilling reservist. I actually promoted to lieutenant commander in September, a year ahead of my year group peers in the active duty. So eat that. So my story with this, my initial plan was to get out of the Navy and do a clean break. I didn't want to do any more. As we got closer to my transition date and getting into a new job, we looked at healthcare options, my wife and I, and saw that it is substantially cheaper to do TRICARE through the reserves than it is through my job. Let's call it almost $10,000 a year difference between premiums, deductibles, all the terms that you as somebody on TRICARE have no idea about. Or maybe you've heard your parents talk about it in vain once or twice. So that was my main motivation for staying in, because for the first 6 months you do the reserves, you get TRICARE for free as if you were still on active duty. It's called the TAMP program. After that, your monthly premium is $234 a month. Your max deductible is $250, and your max out-of-pocket cost for a year for your family is $1,000. Which I don't know how the other panelists are, what your healthcare is like, but it's probably substantially more expensive than that on a yearly basis. So that was my main motivator. I joined a submarine undersea warfare operations unit in Denver. It was actually a pretty seamless transition. We drill once a month.
We might have lost Eric there. So
He's going underwater.
yeah, he's deploying with the Undersea Warfare Reserve Unit. There are some really cool units out there. That's one of the reasons I almost stayed in the reserves. I was doing a space job on my shore duty, and the Space Command has a cool reservist unit in DC and also one at Monterey at the postgraduate school. That you basically, I think on the weekend, you just test all the drones and rockets that all the NPS master's students are making. So so you can leave your community in the reserves. And I don't know, Lauren, can you speak to that? Is that easy to do? Like if you just take a general like LT job?
And Eric's back, but I will just say quickly, like the general LT thing, I think it's pretty easy to do, but depends on what the needs of your reserve command and unit are. Anything's easy if they need someone to do it. You kind of just have to, and that's kind of the thing about getting a job in the reserves. I found that a lot of it was like some sort of secret like sauce. You had to like know who to ask and figure out. I'm like, where's, especially as a nuke, I'm like, where's the manual for this? And, not a lot of people know what you're talking about or have any idea. It's kind of just like everybody's just rolling around. So, I mean, I'll just say I did reserves for kind of the opposite reason that Eric did. And it's funny, I felt like it was going to be really hard for me to do a clean break from active duty. I was like, wow, this is such a huge part of my life, and it's been a big part of my life for so long. I don't know that I can just like not be in the Navy anymore. That's just weird. I'm not sure how to handle that right now. So I will work on looking for a job and sign up for the reserves. Like that'll be fine. And for me, I did 3 years active like drilling, and you know, put on 04, like all that stuff's pretty cool. But at some point, as an 04 with, you know, I was super proactive and got my TSSCI re-upped or whatever you want to call it before I got out of active duty. And that is just like a big bullseye on your back in the reserves. So it's like, okay, hey, you're a 04 SWO, kind of, we can put you anywhere, and you got a TSSCI. That's kind of like code for some sort of mobilization. But I will say there's, you know, definitely some options. I don't want to say that there's not ways to navigate that. What's that, Kevin?
I hear Djibouti's nice.
Yeah, right. So I mean, so it ultimately, in the end, for me, I just felt like for my family, it was kind of the stakes were a little too high. I had a baby, and you know, the reserves was good to me, but it's tough. I mean, it's, you know, only one weekend a month, but when you're, you know, working an intense full-time job and you roll to the weekend and work and then roll to the next week and you're still working, I'm like, oh my God, I'm exhausted. But so, you know, it depends probably on your unit, depends on your job, and depends on your family situation. And ultimately for me, when my husband and I were both working and we didn't necessarily need the extra income, it kind of then just became a little bit of a burden. And now I'm in the IRR because, like Mike, I still can't figure out that I'm totally done. Clearly I am, though. So that's a personal problem I will have to address at some point. But yeah, I'll toss it back over to Eric. I know he wasn't quite done with his reserve thoughts.
Yeah, I'm not sure where I dropped off, but kind of similar to what Lauren was saying, there's some bullshit involved. I'm the admin officer. I have to do fit reps. It sucks. It really sucks, especially in the reserves when people don't do anything. So there's that. On the plus side, there's other sub-JOs there. And pre-COVID, we would go get coffee and have lunch, long lunches. And it was like back being on the boat sometimes, because you can bitch about what's going on in your life or call people communists, which will get you reported to HR in the real world. That was a fun aspect. Going to Hawaii is pretty cool. I got a sweet hotel on the beach back in 2018 or 2019. So there's upsides, but kind of in the same position as Lauren right now. They're about to renew my TS clearance, which could potentially put more of a bullseye on my back to do a mobilization. Typically, just for everybody's clarification, if you go straight from active duty to the reserves, you get a 2-year grace period where they can't touch you. Very, very, very few 03s get mobilized, even outside of their grace period. 04s are more in the window. And there are some good ones. I had a guy I work with who went to Dubai and got to be like the Navy liaison out there for 6 months and just hung out with the admirals and generals and like the Dubai military. But there are crappy ones, like going to Djibouti for 9 months and you fly a desk and do paperwork for the SEALs or something. And you can't go off base. So yeah, come ask me again in 6 months, I might be out. But it's been good to me for the last 2.5 years.
Eric still gets to write deck plate leadership on paperwork twice a year.
Oh my God. So many chiefs.
And Eric, this is something I learned recently is like you can request orders for a few weeks up to a year or so, or 2 years if you want. So it's like a nice unemployment insurance, you know, if you're into that type of thing.
You can voluntarily mobilize for 6 to 9 months or a year. Don't get me wrong, I considered it a couple weeks ago and my job was driving me crazy.
Yeah, that's something I didn't realize. I'm still in the camp of I'm happy not doing Navy stuff on the weekend, but
We had a question there. It was how open should you be about service-connected disabilities, and do companies really try to work with people with disabilities? And I think the latter is definitely from what I've seen. I think when I was in the Navy, I was of the ilk that big business is the devil, and they're always out to just make money. And I've seen so much good stuff from big companies and the companies that I work with, like Starbucks. Every employee gets a pound of coffee, and like most people donate like every other week to send over to veterans that are deployed. I'm trying to think of the other just really cool things I've heard from not just veterans stuff, but and then when you are a big business, you get asked all the time for donations and sponsor this, sponsor that. So I mean, it's but as far as the disability goes, I have a small service-connected disability. I get acid reflux, anxiety kind of linked together. So it's not noticeable, and it doesn't really affect me, but I've never had to discuss that. Anybody kind of closer to like the hiring manager, HR people, I guess, what would I mean, there's laws against that too, I believe. So as far as like hiring laws and whatever, but as far as, can one of you guys speak a little more to that better than I can?
So from kind of like the Amazon perspective, right? So if I'm hiring for a manager, it is not a physical, like you're not going to be moving boxes or lifting things, right? But in like the job description, it will say, required to be able to work, lift up to 49 pounds and walk, almost like 10 hours a day, right? Most jobs, I'd say all, will have that disclaimer like at the bottom of like, hey, these are the general, like the physical requirements of the job, right? Beyond that, like if you can do that within the realm of your disability, like, yeah, I am legally bound to not be able to discriminate against for that, right? And especially bigger companies, if they screw that up, that's lawsuits in the millions of dollars, right? So generally my take on that, right, is to kind of be, obviously, right, you don't want to like, I don't know, if you're not comfortable with it, should that be on your resume? Probably not, right? Should you be like that your first interaction with your hiring manager? No, right? But once you have built that rapport and you understand that you'd be a good fit for it, yeah, I think it's okay to be open and honest with that, right? Because one, you're protected under United States law, and two, right, it's how do you find the best fit within the organization? Hopefully that kind of answers the question.
No, that's I'm trying to see if there's any questions that we have. You guys, panelists, you're doing a heck of a job.
While we're on the topic, if there's anything that happened to you while you were in the service that could potentially qualify for a disability, please go get it checked out. I'm kicking myself now. I have some tinnitus. It's probably related to the boat. It doesn't just happen on its own. I don't get a lot of rock concerts, but because it wasn't discovered while I was on active duty, or I didn't at least like try to pursue it, I don't get anything out of it. So if you have something, take the time. Even if you get a 0% disability rating, it could increase over the time if your condition gets worse. It also gets you various VA benefits that you wouldn't otherwise have.
Yeah, this was something that else was spelled out really well in that awesome TAP class I had, to take that, get out of the Navy physical very seriously and make sure you just, and the Navy's covering their butt too. Like they want to make sure that you're okay. So, I'm trying to look at some of the attendees to see if I know specific questions that some of them might want to ask as far as or talk about Wednesday. Some of these panelists might stop by on Wednesday. Corey or his other doctor buddy are going to man a table. So if you guys have any friends that want to talk med school, or at least to entertain it, swing by on Wednesday, talk to Corey. I normally try to get someone to speak to law school as well. Richard, the expert, has spoken to many people about law school. There is a patent law firm that sometimes comes to the DC job fair, that they are looking to people to go into their clerk program to then become a patent lawyer, and they pick up all the bill for the law school. It's a pretty cool deal because they're having a hard time finding technical leaders, and they think the law part is the easy part, and so that's kind of cool. Aaron, who's on the chat here, he actually came up in Seattle and talked law to some of the nukes up there. So I'm trying to think of some of the different things. The one I've said in a couple emails into my board, TerraPower's coming for the first time. I'm a Bill Gates fan, and this is his nuclear power venture, and this is really the first thing they're going to be hiring at. So it's kind of neat because this happened very similar with us in Blue Origin a couple years ago. Blue Origin did R&D, but then there was a nuke that was real high up in Blue Origin that when they wanted to start hiring a lot of project managers, engineering managers, whatever, he reached out to us, and there's been, I think, over a dozen people get hired at Blue Origin, which is a really hard company to get a job at, and I'm assuming TerraPower is going to be similar. So the other hard companies, they're like, you guys can get jobs in the hardest companies out there. Like your friends, like if you mention to them that, there's a chance I could get an interview at Bain or BCG or McKinsey, even without an MBA, like your friends that from back home be like, really? I'm like, yeah, because nukes have gone to these companies and have crushed it over the years. So BCG is coming to talk at the job fair. I don't know how many hours they stay there because these are the actual consultants. These aren't recruiters. These are former Navy nukes that are coming back as consultants. Trying to think of other things I should say about the career fair itself, but I'm slipping here. How about there was another question in there as far as or do one of you guys want to jump on one of the questions that you flagged?
Yeah, there was a question about talking about a little more about public utilities and project management, supervisory element in the utility industry. Yeah, what I felt is there was a lot of parallels in the utility industry with what we did as nukes. And it's really because of all the strict regulatory compliance, documentation, whether it be environmental. I work at a local government. We're what's called a special district, so we're technically a government. We have a elected board of directors that I report to, or that oversee our organization. But even on the private side, it's the same thing. For the project management side of it, it's really not too difficult. Most, especially if you're looking at capital improvement projects, I mean, you get, a contract, you get these specifications and agreement, and you just have to execute that. And that's really, it's, compared to what we had to do, like nuking it out, really trying to figure stuff out, everything that happens within a project is governed by regulations. And so normally when you get that contract, specifications, whatever it is, even outside regulatory stuff is referenced, and it's required by law to be referenced in there. So what I did is my first project, I had no idea really what I was doing, but my boss handed me all the contract documents. And so I just literally read it from cover to cover and flagged stuff, and maybe terms I didn't understand, I didn't know. But what you'll realize is, when you talk, I'm trying to remember some of this lingo, it's been a while, but I think when you talk like a WAF and there's some other stuff, those processes were very similar to a lot of the project management and lingo that you hear in the PMP. For a lot of the public utilities, you do not need the PMP cert, But what I do recommend is if you do pick up the book and you do get the training, a lot of the lingo and the process is very similar to what's being used in a lot of public utilities as far as how contract amendments are done within utility projects and programs. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but it's really not that difficult. Like I said, your job is just to make sure that you're staying within all the regulations and the contracts, and you get copies of them. So you just got to read them, flag them, and you may have to ask your boss, hey, what does this term mean? And they'll explain it to you. And once you pick up that little bit of lingo, it's not very hard.
Hey, Jose, that totally resonated with me, because that's what I got started at here at Google, was just doing contract and change management. And that was the skill that I was able to leverage most, was picking up this document, call it an RPM, that nobody really wants to read the details in and know where to find this, and read it cover to cover, and then understand, okay, I think it said something about that in section 12 alpha. I'm going to pull that out and verify what it says when you put this change request in front of me for $1 million, and I'll reject it because it has no basis based on our contract. And that adds a ton of value. So just being able to read through stuff like that is, I think, the value a nuke adds to an org.
Yeah, and to add to that, what I've also seen a lot in the industry, both power, water, any of the utilities, is, a lot of the management that's up there, they started in engineering, so that was more design, whatever. But a lot of them take pride in their knowledge, so they actually don't go back to, they try to memorize things, and they don't go back to the document. So when I would get, same thing, I would get a change order from a contractor or something like that. I had no idea what they were talking about, and I would just go and I'm like, well, I couldn't find it anywhere in the contract, so yeah, no, or fine, take us to court. But I mean, nukes just kind of had that ability to, almost everything we do is governed by some document, some book. If you can do that within the utility sector, at least, and there are similar things, you really do stand out, because a lot of people are afraid to do that because they almost want to take pride in, well, I know this and this makes sense. It's not about what makes sense. It's about a contract and what's going to keep you out of court and, keep the bills paid.
Jose, that is not just in like industrial or engineering or anything. It's amazing on a daily basis how many people don't actually know what they're doing or what is the guidance behind their job. And it's almost like, hey, like, here's the piece of paper. Like, it's all available information, but right, to us, it's just second nature. Like, yeah, where's my reference document, right? And then you just go find it, and then you're like, okay, this is why I'm doing the job. And it's like, just head and shoulders, you'll be more competent and better at your job because of that background.
I mean, it's not that this is for money, but like some of the stuff that these guys are and Lauren are talking about, like, you can also do this for just the good of. I'm on my town planning commission, and so the fact that I have an engineering background, I can look at a diagram and look at the state regulations as far as setbacks for a new building built in our town. Like, that's in our town of 3,500. There, I mean, I don't want to speak ill of it, but there's not a ton of people that could probably do that right now. And so I don't get paid to be in the planning commission. It's just as needed, but. Some of the things that you're going to be able to do once you leave the Navy and have some more free time, and it's kind of cool to work on local government too. So one follow on for Jose. Jose, I get a lot of questions on or requests like jobs in green engineering, like green energy, green engineering. Like I'm thinking of, do you think some of the utilities would, the people that say they're interested in green engineering and green energy would enjoy working in the utility sector?
Yeah, I think so. But I wouldn't just limit yourself to that. there's going to be those opportunities. I mean, the reality is that is the future. So whether, I work in the state of California, so we're obviously very environmentally conscious. So that's going to be regulated, and it already is mandated on many things we do. But that's just where it's going to go anyway. So I think the future is going to be green no matter almost anywhere you go.
No, I think you're right. We're kind of creeping down here because East Coasters are getting tired, and we've already been going for a while. But Chris asked us to speak to the logistics at the career fair. So for the career fair, this is a Zoom webinar, and this was all new to me as of coronavirus. Obviously, it's just us and the Brady Bunch windows, whereas in the Wednesday, it is a Zoom meeting. A Zoom meeting, everybody is in a window, and the way, instead of having many individual Zoom meetings for all the companies and sending you 1,000 links, we decided if it was possible through Zoom, can we just have one meeting and then put each company in different what's called breakout rooms. And breakout rooms are used for different purposes within different meetings. Some people, like at Corey goes to his, AMA, American Medical Association meeting or something like that, via Zoom. They'd go and talk in small groups and they'd come back into the big meeting. Well, ours, we're using the breakout rooms for the company tables, so it really has lent itself well to that. So the only negative is that everybody has to come in the front door. So we're hoping the companies show up about a half an hour earlier and get situated in their breakout rooms. And then as nukes get off work or they get availability or they, lock their kid in their bedroom or whatever, they log in. And I think we're gonna try to initially, if everybody just comes at the same time, we're gonna kind of try to spread everybody out like a shotgun golf start, every 1 through 18, and and then after that, what we're gonna do is make every person that every candidate, every nuke, a co-host, which allows you to just bounce back and forth to rooms. That's something we didn't think of last time. It was our first time. So last time everybody had to come back into the main room to then be directed into the next company. So hopefully that lets us, now you can still come back into the main room with myself and probably some other friendly faces in the main room and ask questions to me, or I can suggest people to talk to. I know a lot of the company reps, a lot of the nukes that are coming. So that's kind of the logistics. Is it perfect? No. From the company side, after the last one, many of them complained that, well, not as many people as I thought stopped by our breakout room, and I felt bad, but because I think in a physical job fair, everybody probably would walk around the room and talk to everybody, just at human nature, or at least, say hi or thank you for coming, even if you had no interest in the company. So that's kind of the gist of it. And it's not exactly a round, whole round peg, but it's not a round hole square peg. It definitely worked last time. People got a lot of value out of it. Hires were made, information was gathered. So that's the gist of Wednesday. So I hope that answers your question there. I think it was Matt. Any from the panelists, any last things you guys want to throw out, to kind of a group audience?
I think I would. Whoop, sorry, go ahead, Kevin.
I was just going to say, I mean, look at me. I look like a trucker holed up here in a 1960 motel room. So don't be afraid.
Don't say that about my friend.
Don't be afraid to ask any question. Like I said before, it was a scary time for me, and I'll admit that. So anything that, I can help with, more than happy to, no matter how silly you think it is. I'm available all day tomorrow, and should be on Wednesday. I got to check my schedule too, but I throw that out there.
Yeah, and I'll just add, for me, frankly, it was exciting. I just felt like there was a ton of possibilities. And so I think, it's okay to be nervous, but try to just look at it as, wow, there's a ton of opportunities, and you are so lucky as nukes, especially, to have such a skill set that is so marketable across many, many different sectors. So frankly, just kind of embrace that and have fun on Wednesday, and really use it as an opportunity to, whether you're a couple years out and you're just looking to kind of get a feel for what's out there and network a little bit, that's great. If you're trying to hone in on jobs, do your best to research companies and specific positions ahead of time, so that, when you go into that breakout room, you can ask pointed questions and kind of get the most out of that time you have that's really valuable with the companies. But whichever end of the spectrum you're on, it's a great opportunity, great networking event, to really kind of take your resume for a spin, polish up your skills, and hopefully land a job when you get to that point.
Yeah, and then to kind of echo what Lauren was saying, try to, I don't know, if it's worthwhile, if you have the ability, try to talk to every company there. Right? Michael talked about the Starbucks team. It was literally nowhere on my radar, but then talking to them, they brought the energy. Like, it was a really cool environment. Like, that's great. That's what this is for, just to be able to talk, right? And you can be open with them. Like, hey, I'm just trying to figure out what's out there. I'm 2 years out. Perfect, right? That makes it a very low key, very chill conversation, where then they can talk about the job and what the company is about, things like that, right? Just be open, right? Have fun, and just try to talk to everybody. And then all of us here, we're all here to help, right? So, Michael was talking about the breakout rooms for the companies. Like, some of us are Zoom wizards, and we can do one-offs and stuff like that just to talk with you. So I'm here to help, and just try to get the most out of it.
Yeah, I'd say don't sell yourself short. A lot of times people get out and they're like, well, I guess I'll work in a nuke plant. And you can do that, but you can do pretty much anything you want. You're probably the most hireable people in the United States right now. You have a lot of skills that very few people have. You have a lot of experience that very few people have. Even if you feel, like you're young, you're in your earlier mid-20s, you show up looking like a grown-up that knows how to take care of things, how to learn, how to go to work. So you can do pretty much whatever you want. You just have to pursue it and not be afraid to pursue it. So reach out to any of us, even if it's outside of our fields. Make friends, keep your friends. You never know who's going to get you a job or introduce you to an opportunity, and go from there.
Yeah, Corey said friends. I was going to say, you're also garnering information for your buddies too, because, I was living in DC, and I went to these SACs, Service Academy Career Conferences, which was kind of the model that I used. We tweaked it a little bit, so afterwards I would just send out emails to my buddies, like, here's the stuff I learned this time, and boom, and send it out. So when you're bouncing around talking to different tables, you're not just, for yourself, but for your friend that's deployed, or your friend that couldn't make it, or just like, wow, I never thought would be a cool career fit for us. It's not in a location where I want to move, but my friend is there too. So that's something else I would mention.
So working with a handful of companies that my company owns, I've gotten to see that there's a war for talent out there. Amazon wants you, Google wants you, Lauren's company wants you, everybody wants you for some sort of job. And you never know where you're going to get pulled. I stumbled into finance, and it seems scary. If you read the Wall Street Journal, there's terms in there you have no idea about. but that's just it. It's jargon. You've learned a different set of language already as a nuke, and you speak it fluently. So you can learn finance. I can teach you finance. I can't teach you passion. I can't teach you persistence. I can't teach you the things that innately make you a nuke. One of the opportunities I got because I was a nuke and the only engineer in one of the few engineers in my company was I got to go down to South America and look at hydro dams and a combined cycle gas turbine and a bunch of diesel generators in the Chilean desert because I had the requisite knowledge to say, yep, this makes sense. Have I seen those things before? No, but I know the engineering principles and can at least apply it. Two last things. One of the companies I work with, the CEO is actually a former nuke, probably 30 years ago. He's done it 3 times now as a CEO, and he's been successful each time. Another company, you may or may not have heard of it, probably not, United States Infrastructure Corporation. They do underground utility locating. A lot of their top executives are former nukes. So their VP of Safety and Environmental Health, their former COO was a nuclear operator or a nuke officer who got out, worked his way up through a couple different engineering spaces, and ended up being the chief operating officer of a $1 billion revenue company. We're everywhere. Your potential is only limited by what you want to do.
Man, we may have to talk offline on USIC as a underground construction person trying to work with them. But
yeah,
I'll agree. They're a big company doing good things out there.
Yeah, that's the safety guy is one of my good friends, Eric, Tom Karnowski. So
that's funny.
Yeah. So
Right.
yeah. One last thing for the panel before we all sign off here. I always get the questions: what should nukes wear? I always overdress. Well, tonight I didn't exactly overdress, but I was gonna wear a tie and a jacket. But Sarah's like, "No, Mike, it's just that's my wife, Sarah." But what should the nukes wear on Wednesday in general? Is there a consensus?
One thing that I miss about the Navy is that they tell you every day exactly what you're going to wear, and there's no ambiguity. For any occasion, you're going to wear what they tell you to wear exactly. So every one of these I've been to, everybody's in a suit. So even if you're just wearing gym shorts under the table on your Zoom call, I hear the pros saying no. At least from the top up.
3 times. I've caught 3 times people just have the top half of the suit. Something always happens and you get up and then, right, like if you're not wearing, like, just if you're going to suit up, suit up.
You have more experience than I do in that field. So with that, I actually have to go. I'm a poll worker tomorrow and have to get up very early. So I'll see you guys.
Thanks, Corey. I think we're all going to sign on. Anybody else want to talk about uniform for anything particular?
That sounds good, but in general, dress for the job that you're going to go for, right? So even though the Facebook guys are cool in their t-shirt and jeans, if you're not necessarily going for that job, don't wear a t-shirt and jeans, dress for the job you're going for.
That's good advice. So
yeah, I guess pre-Zoom times, when I went for my interview in California for Google, I wore a suit and I felt like a jerk, being paraded around there in this suit and everything. So like Lauren said, kind of gear it toward the company you're going for, or maybe a little up, but I don't think you have to kill it.
Yeah, good advice. So well, thanks guys, especially East Coasters, Lauren, Kevin, thanks for helping us out. Jose, thanks for joining this crazy this clan here. Congratulations on your Dodgers. So and Eric, thanks as usual, and Alex, first time you did a heck of a job. So Yeah, maybe we'll do this a little more regularly because who knows how long we're going to be quarantined. But definitely, it was a good way to connect this job fair. But if I don't see you guys, let me know if there's anything you guys need. And thanks again for giving me your time.
Good to be here. See everybody on Wednesday.
Take care, guys.
Stay safe.